They looked like ordinary women living next door. But behind their doors, behind their smiles, they were hiding crimes so dark their neighbors never saw them coming. In the quiet neighborhoods of Pensacola, Florida, Judy Buenoano was known as a devoted mother, a helpful neighbor, and a woman who seemed to embody resilience. She kept her home immaculate, attended church, and was always ready with a kind word or a casserole for those in need. But Judy's early life was marked by hardship. Born Judy Buenoano in Texas, she lost her mother at a young age and endured years of abuse and foster care. Those who knew her as a child remembered a girl who learned to survive by hiding her pain behind a polite smile. As an adult, Judy married James Goodyear, a respected Air Force sergeant. To neighbors, they seemed like the perfect family, Judy, James, and their children, living the American dream. But in 1971, tragedy struck. James fell mysteriously ill and died after a brief, agonizing sickness. Doctors attributed his death to natural causes, and Judy received a substantial life insurance payout. With the insurance money, Judy moved her family to a new home and started over. She remarried, but her new husband, Bobby Joe Morris, also died suddenly under suspicious circumstances. Again, Judy collected insurance money, and again, she played the role of the grieving widow. Over the years, Judy's relationships were marked by a chilling pattern. Men who entered her life often left it in coffins, and each time, Judy's financial situation improved. Neighbors began to whisper, but Judy was careful. She volunteered at local charities, attended PTA meetings, and maintained a reputation for strength and kindness. Few suspected the darkness beneath her calm exterior. In 1980, her son Michael, a bright teenager, was struck by a mysterious illness that left him partially paralyzed. Judy cared for him, but soon after, she took him on a canoeing trip. Michael drowned when the canoe capsized. He was unable to swim due to his disability. Investigators later discovered the canoe had been tampered with. Once again, Judy collected a large insurance payout, and once again, she played the grieving mother, winning sympathy from her neighbors. But cracks began to show. Some neighbors noticed Judy's stories didn't always add up. She could be charming, but also evasive, and her tears sometimes seemed forced. In 1983, Judy became engaged to John Gentry, a successful businessman. Soon after, Gentry fell violently ill after taking vitamins Judy had given him. He survived, and his suspicions led police to take a closer look at Judy's past. Investigators uncovered a trail of death and deception. They exhumed the bodies of Judy's previous husbands and son, finding lethal levels of arsenic. The evidence was overwhelming. The community was stunned. The woman they had trusted, shared meals with, and welcomed into their homes was now the prime suspect in a string of murders. Judy was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. The trial became a media sensation, with reporters flocking to Pensacola to cover the case of the so-called Black Widow. In court, Judy maintained her innocence, but the evidence was damning. Testimony revealed a pattern of calculated killings, each motivated by greed and a chilling lack of remorse. In 1984, Judy Buenoano was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. She became the first woman executed in Florida in nearly 150 years. For the families of her victims, and for the neighbors who had once admired her, the truth was devastating. They struggled to reconcile the woman they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer revealed in court. Even after her conviction, the shockwaves rippled through the community. Some neighbors felt guilt for not seeing the signs. Others became more guarded, locking their doors and trusting less. Judy Buenoano's story remains a chilling reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, behind the most ordinary of smiles. Her legacy is one of betrayal, loss, and the enduring scars left on a once trusting community. For those who lived beside her, the revelation was devastating. They had shared meals, conversations, and smiles with a woman who had turned murder into a way of life. Today, the story of Judy Buenoano is taught in criminal justice classes and remembered by those who once called her neighbor. Her case stands as a warning. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones we think we know best. In the early 2000s, the quiet streets of Plano, Texas, were lined with well-kept lawns and friendly neighbors. Among them was Dena Schlosser, a woman whose gentle smile and soft-spoken manner made her seem like the perfect neighbor, wife, and mother. Dena lived with her husband John and their 3 young daughters in a modest home. She was often seen walking her children to the park, exchanging pleasantries with neighbors, and attending church every Sunday. To those around her, she was a devoted mother, always attentive to her girls. At church, Dena was known for her quiet faith. She sang hymns softly, participated in Bible study, and rarely missed a service. Her family was active in the congregation, and many parishioners described her as kind, if a bit reserved. But behind closed doors, Dena struggled with a darkness that few could see. She had battled postpartum depression after the birth of each child, and her mental health had begun to unravel in the months leading up to the tragedy. Friends and neighbors noticed subtle changes. Dena sometimes stared vacantly into space, her mind elsewhere. She spoke of hearing voices and seeing visions, but those around her dismissed these as stress or exhaustion. Dena's husband, John, and their church leaders believed that prayer and faith would be enough to heal her. Medical treatment was discouraged, and Dena's symptoms grew worse. She withdrew from friends, spending long hours alone at home. On November 22, 2004, the day began like any other. John left for work, the older girls went to school, and Dena was left alone with her youngest daughter, 10-month-old Margaret. But inside the house, a storm was brewing. Dena listened to hymns on the radio, her mind racing with delusions. She believed she was receiving messages from God, telling her to make an unthinkable sacrifice. The voices in her head grew louder, drowning out reason and reality. Acting on her delusions, Dena took a kitchen knife and, in a state of psychosis, harmed her infant daughter. The act was both brutal and incomprehensible, shattering the illusion of safety that had surrounded her home. In the aftermath, Dena calmly called 911 and confessed to what she had done. When police arrived, they found her sitting quietly, covered in blood, singing church songs as if in a trance. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. Parents who had once trusted Dena with playdates and carpooling now locked their doors, struggling to comprehend how someone so familiar could commit such a crime. Police and emergency vehicles crowded the street, their flashing lights illuminating the stunned faces of neighbors who gathered in disbelief. Reporters soon arrived, and the story made national headlines. Investigators quickly determined that Dena was legally insane at the time of the murder. Her history of mental illness, combined with the lack of medical intervention, painted a tragic picture of a woman lost in her own mind. The trial was brief, but emotional. Dena's defense attorneys described her long battle with postpartum psychosis and the religious pressures that discouraged her from seeking help. The prosecution did not dispute her insanity, and the court committed her to a state mental hospital. For years, Dena remained under strict supervision, receiving treatment for her mental illness. In 2012, she was quietly released to outpatient care, required to take medication and live under constant monitoring. The community of Plano was left to pick up the pieces. Parents became more vigilant, and conversations about mental health grew more urgent. Some neighbors felt guilt for not recognizing the signs. Others became fearful, questioning how well they truly knew those around them. The tragedy sparked difficult conversations in churches and schools about the importance of mental health care, the dangers of untreated illness, and the need for compassion and vigilance in every community. For years, the story of Dena Schlosser haunted Plano. Her case became a symbol of what can happen when mental illness is ignored, and how the horrors behind closed doors can remain invisible until it is far too late. Today, residents of Plano remember the chilling juxtaposition. A neighbor who seemed so normal, hiding delusions so powerful they destroyed her family. The case remains a somber reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers are the ones we never see coming. Dena's story is now taught in mental health and criminal justice courses, a case study in the intersection of faith, illness, and tragedy. For the families and neighbors who lived through it, the scars remain, a constant reminder to look beyond the surface and to care for those who may be suffering in silence. In the end, the tragedy of Dena Schlosser is not just a story of loss, but a call to action, a plea for awareness, compassion, and the courage to reach out when someone seems lost in the shadows. In the quiet suburb of Sherwood, Arkansas, Christina Marie Riggs was known as a hard-working nurse and a devoted single mother. To her neighbors, she was the woman next door, friendly, reserved, and always seen caring for her two young children, Justin and Shelby. Christina's life had never been easy. Raised in a troubled home, she struggled with feelings of abandonment and low self-worth from a young age. As a teenager, she dreamed of becoming a nurse, hoping to help others in ways she herself had never experienced. She eventually achieved her goal, working long shifts at a local hospital. Colleagues described her as compassionate and attentive, someone who always put her patients first, even when her own life was unraveling. But behind her professional demeanor, Christina was fighting a losing battle with depression and anxiety. After a failed marriage left her raising two children alone, the weight of her responsibilities became overwhelming. Financial struggles mounted. Christina worked nights, barely sleeping, and often skipped meals to make sure her children had enough. Friends noticed she was losing weight, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion and worry. Despite her struggles, Christina tried to shield Justin and Shelby from her pain. She read them bedtime stories, helped with homework, and cheered at their school events, determined to give them a sense of normalcy. But the darkness inside her grew. Christina began to withdraw from friends and family, isolating herself in her small apartment. She confided in her diary, writing about her hopelessness and the feeling that she was failing her children. She sought help from doctors, but the medications prescribed for her depression left her feeling numb and detached. The side effects were difficult, and Christina sometimes stopped taking them altogether, hoping she could manage on her own. As the months passed, Christina's despair deepened. She began to believe that her children would be better off without her, that the world was too cruel for them to endure. Her thoughts turned dark, and she struggled to see any way out. On the night of November 4th, 1997, Christina made a decision that would forever change her family and her community. She tucked Justin and Shelby into bed, kissed them goodnight, and sat alone in the darkness, her mind racing with despair. In the early hours, Christina prepared syringes filled with potassium chloride, the same drug used in lethal injections at the prison where she once worked as a nurse. She believed she was sparing her children from a lifetime of pain. She injected Justin and Shelby as they slept, hoping they would pass peacefully. But when the drug failed to work as intended, Christina, in a state of panic and heartbreak, smothered them with a pillow. Afterward, Christina attempted to take her own life. She wrote a note explaining her actions, expressing her love for her children and her belief that she was saving them from suffering. But Christina survived. When police arrived, they found her unconscious and the children lifeless in their beds. The scene was quiet, almost peaceful, belying the horror that had unfolded. News of the tragedy spread quickly through Sherwood. Neighbors who had seen the children playing just days before were stunned, unable to comprehend how such a thing could happen in their community. The investigation revealed Christina's long battle with mental illness, her failed attempts to get help, and the crushing isolation she felt. Detectives pieced together her final days through her diary, medical records, and interviews with friends and co-workers. At trial, Christina's defense argued that her severe depression and trauma had driven her to the unthinkable. Mental health experts testified about her fragile state of mind, but the jury was unmoved by her pleas. In 1998, Christina Marie Riggs was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. The verdict sent shockwaves through Arkansas, reigniting debates about mental illness, motherhood, and the death penalty. On May 2, 2000, Christina was executed by lethal injection, becoming one of the few women in Arkansas history to face such a fate. Her final words were an apology to her children and a plea for forgiveness. For the people of Sherwood, the shock never faded. Neighbors who had once waved to Christina across the lawn now struggled to reconcile the woman they thought they knew with the tragedy she had caused. The case of Christina Marie Riggs became a cautionary tale, discussed in classrooms and mental health seminars across the country. It forced communities to confront the hidden struggles of those around them and the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness. For those who lived beside her, the memory lingers, a reminder that even the most ordinary lives can conceal unimaginable pain. Christina's story is a plea for compassion, vigilance, and the courage to reach out to those who may be suffering in silence. In the end, The tragedy of Christina Marie Riggs is not just a story of loss, but a call to action. A reminder that the greatest dangers can hide behind the most familiar doors, and that every community must look out for its own. Judy, Dena, Christina. To their neighbors, they seemed like ordinary women, mothers, wives, caretakers. But behind the walls of their homes, they hid crimes that stunned entire communities. Like, subscribe and turn on notifications for more real stories that reveal just how much we never truly know about the people living next door. And remember, the smile across the fence might hide more than you think.